Ahead of the European Conference on Optical Communications in Copenhagen next month, All Things Photonics caught up with two members of the Optical Internetworking Forum's board. With board president Nathan Tracy and board member Mike Klempa, today's episode peels back the layers on OIF's work to optimize, globally, interoperability and connectivity. The present challenge to shape next-generation AI infrastructure and networking solutions is taking place in a dynamic environment. But OIF, with and through its partner ecosystem, sees opportunity in the need to overcome the connectivity bottleneck. At ECOC, the forum brings a live multi-vendor demonstration with 35 member companies from up and down the value chain. The demo spans optical, electrical, energy-efficient, and management interfaces, and it showcases interoperability across diverse technologies. Such distinct technologies advance at unique rates, but OIF's function and its mission is broader than any one enabling technology. And it's unchanging in its focus to optimize datacom, telecom, and networking innovation to address compute and connectivity bottlenecks.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hamamatsu Corporation, a leading manufacturer of devices for the generation and measurement of infrared, visible, UV light, and X-rays. Hamamatsu is dedicated to the advancement of photonics through extensive research and offers specialized systems for select applications. Visit hamamatsu.com to learn more. Today's episode is also brought to you by American Elements, the world's leading manufacturer of engineered and advanced materials. With a catalog of over 35,000 products available in both industrial bulk and laboratory quantities. To learn more, visit AmericanElements.com. American Elements, now invent.
From Photonics Media, this is All Things Photonics, a podcast where we explore industry-shaping advancements in lasers, optics, imaging, metrology, and sensing. Each episode, we'll speak with some of the brightest minds in industry and research about the trends shaping the landscape of photonics.
So as we speak today, we're less than 2 weeks now ahead of ECOC when the industry heads to Copenhagen. And 2025 already has been an eventful year, not just in terms of industry developments, but probably societal developments too. I want to start by asking for your sense of what the mood is going to be as we approach ECOC and then move into Q4 of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the trends which is really setting the mood for the industry right now is the effect AI has on all this R&D and system development at the moment. I think it's super inspiring and exciting, trying to solve this AI connectivity problem because, like we're seeing, in all these OIF meetings and everywhere in the industry and in trade shows, if you ask 10 people, you'll get 11 different opinions on the best way to solve these problems. So on one hand, maybe it can be a little frustrating, but on the other, I don't think there's a more dynamic and exciting place to be right now if you're interested in the intersection of AI and optical connectivity or connectivity in general, just because, electrical signaling will always probably be, or not always, but it will have an impact on AI connectivity for the near future. It's still having its moment.
This is truly, the pinnacle of places to be and the right time to be here. The industry is tackling problems that have never even been contemplated before, let alone the speed at which we have to tackle these problems. And so we are just in the center of the storm. We're right there at the eye. And from an organizational standpoint, the OIF is bringing together all the right companies, all the right technologies to address these fundamental industry problems and figure out ways to orchestrate the development of solutions to market, really, really hard solutions to come to market.
I have all these questions sort of scripted out, and I was wondering how long it would take before someone mentioned AI, and it ended up being about 8 or 9 seconds. So I wanted to ask, when you talk about AI, Mike, you use words like inspiring and opportunity, and this is a loaded question, obviously, but intentionally so. When you're at an OIF meeting or you're on the show floor, How do you think AI is qualified? Is it in terms of opportunity? Is it in terms of challenges, or is it something that sort of combines those realms?
Yeah, so I think especially in the realm of OIF, everyone is in the room contributing to either identifying the problems or solving the problems. So it's a very collaborative and it's inspiring to maybe we work through a whole project. We solve the problem of data is not being sent fast enough. Right, we solve the 224 gig problem, and then we have as we're wrapping it up, the end users, the hyperscalers say, "Great, now we want to go twice as fast, and we want it to go just as far, and we want to do it with less power." Right, so it's inspiring in the sense that maybe there's maybe not an end to sight in all these advancements that could be made, and so it's just very it's pushing everyone to do the best work, and it's really to reach out and to work with the DSP, the silicon providers need to work with the connector vendors, because it's a whole ecosystem now that it's not just one kind of sector's problem. That's kind of the linchpin or the roadblock. It's I think everything needs to be co-optimized now to be able to make the next leap in terms of progress for connectivity to enable all these AI applications.
A lot of the progress that we've reported on this year, both in terms of research in R&D development or R&D developments, but also in terms of what industry has done, um, they do fall into the same areas technologically. Things that we were talking about at ECOC last year, things that we were talking about at OFC earlier this year, right? Beyond just AI in a broad sense, there are some trends that have emerged and fortified, things like hollow core fiber. That's just one example. Um, where has the advancement been most evident to you, Nathan, this year in terms of what the industry is picking up?
It's interesting. Fundamentally, what we're all here to talk about is a higher speed, higher data rate challenge. But all that does, if we can figure out how to solve that, all that does is exacerbate other problems, such as densities, such as power delivery, thermal management, things like that. And so, I would say from our standpoint, we're hyper focused on high speed, high density, so bandwidth per unit, so to speak. But you, all of those problems have to be considered with all of the tangential problems as well. And so we're working on higher speed, higher density electrical signaling, but we're also working on higher speed, higher density optical signaling. And then of course then what are the density trade-offs, the beachfront per unit area type of densities that can be achieved, and then how can we deliver the power, and how do we get the heat out. So it you can't you can't think about it from an individual challenge standpoint. We have to think holistically. And as I talk to people, I try and always take them to the rack level thought instead of the component level thought. We can imagine solutions, all kinds of exotic solutions at the component level, but if it doesn't work at the rack level, and that's where the density comes in, is we have to get higher aggregate bandwidths per unit compute space. And so that unit compute space that I like to think about is the rack, and we have to solve that total problem, but we have to solve each one of those pieces at the same time too.
So a couple things within that, and we'll get to I suppose we'll get to the second one first, because I do want to talk about this notion of a full value chain. And as you talk, there's obviously that's a piece of it. But I want to ask first, how do you gauge progress when you're talking about solving these big, not just industry but societal bottlenecks? You can probably chart progress maybe on the micro scale, but of course you're thinking on the macro scale. So I want to just follow that up and ask, how do you discern progress as you're moving from year to year, from show to show?
So the way I think about it is it's generational hardware, right? So we think in terms of incremental units, and sometimes the unit is, what's the electrical signaling rate, what's the optical signaling rate going to be, and so from that standpoint, it's very easy for us to calibrate, what's the unit of measure that we're making progress on, and then from a OIF problem solving standpoint, what's the draft revision number that we're at this week versus what we were at a month ago, and we're just constantly incrementing across all those boundaries, the physical boundaries and the documentation or standardization boundaries.
OIF at ECOC is running and behind a multi-vendor interoperability demonstration that does span the full value chain, right? You have vendors and those on the component side, but also EDA firms, test and measurement providers. Tell us about the demo.
Yeah, so at a high level, why people participate. There's just so much value that all the participants get out of these demonstrations, and it's a cyclical feeding input where it's really driving the industry forward because of the breadth and the variety of participants, like you mentioned, who are really looking to solve these critical networking challenges that our membership identifies with practical solutions. And so, no end user is building up a data center, wants to hinge any component, any building block on a single source. And so, not only proving that this technology works, but that also it's mature, it's robust, and it's supported by this, the multi-vendor participation ecosystem. It's a real, underlying theme of all these live interoperability events. And so, and not only are we, we're not proving it out in some very sterile, ideal case test lab, right? But we're enabling all this super hard technology to work on, these crazy show floors with so much noise, so many fingers poking and prodding, and just a logistical challenge of bringing it halfway around the world to do this demonstration. It's pretty amazing that, honestly, I'm kind of one of the people organizing it, and I'm always blown away that it always is a success, which is it's no small feat. And so this year, like Nathan mentioned, we kind of, from the electrical interface side, we sunset the 112 gig because the kind of the feedback from the participants in the membership was, this is proven, this is done. So now we're moving on to 224 gig per lane, which we've been showing for a while now, but now it's growing. There's more connector vendors, more channel vendors, more silicon providers, more optical vendors, and so we're from one hand we're just leaping from speed generation to speed generation, but then also throughout the different biannual events, we're also growing the representation of each different technology. Whether it's this year at ECOC, we're demonstrating 400 ZR, so our coherent optics projects, 400 ZR, 800 ZR multi-vendor interop. We have live electrical demos up to 448 gigabits per second over these new emerging channels, enabling these new architectures that Nathan has mentioned. And we're also addressing energy efficiency. That's a big theme in the OIF, and really, as the amount of optical connections or connectivity increases in these data centers, we want to try to drive that efficiency of the power consumption down, so we can continually to grow these interconnectivity schemes. And so, we're addressing efficiency in AI architectures with the lower power optical solutions, whether that's, unretimed pluggable optics or NPO or co-packaged optics solutions in the future, and as well as the kind of the infrastructure to support that, whether it's external laser sources or the management that really connects all these pieces of the network together through CMIS.
And as it relates to the demo, right, OIF is not just working with its membership, it's also working for its membership. So when you're bringing all of these collaborators together at all reaches of the value chain, is there a message from OIF that you wish to convey to all your members, assuming that this is ultimately a successful demo?
So this will be a successful demo because we've already staged it.
Yeah.
It's all in the process of getting shipped up and headed on its way to ECOC. Organizationally, the OIF doesn't have employees. Mike and I are not employees. We're members, and our companies are sending us to participate in the OIF because the industry benefits when we deliver interoperable solutions. And the great thing about the OIF membership is the expanse of bandwidth. So we have academic members, we have test and measurement members, we have silicon component, optical component members, we have interconnect providers, we have equipment providers, and we have end users. We have the hyperscalers themselves as members. And so everybody is there collaboratively solving problems to be able to document the requirements to enable interoperability so that these things can be deployed at the mind-boggling scale that is being leveraged for hyperscale cloud computing and AI workloads. And so it is truly a a total solution that we bring to market. And part of the value of what we have, because we're doing all this under one roof in the OIF, when the electrical guy is sitting there beside the optical expert, and we're each solving our specific problems, and one says to the other, "Hey, I've got a management interaction problem," then that can become another specification that the OIF can work on. And that's exactly what's happened when you look at all the different work groups that we have in the OIF. We are at the center of the storm in terms of delivering interoperable solutions to the marketplace to enable the next generation of AI. So we have our coherent optics working group. We have our coherence light development activities. We have our energy efficient interfaces group, which is focused on developing next generation energy efficient electrical and optical interconnects because power is just such a huge factor. We're developing in our CEI group, we're developing power optimized electrical channel definitions to enable new hardware architectures. And then, the activity that really ties it all together is the CMIS activity, where we're solving the common management infrastructure challenges to get our host silicon and our pluggable optics, our pluggable copper links to be able to all communicate with each other over a common management solution. And that's not the end, right? As all these people sit here collaboratively solving these problems, then a new problem pops up, and we can say, "Hey, that's one that the OIF should address as well." So that's really what we're. I apologize, very wordy response, but that's really what the OIF's message with regard to ECOC and anything beyond ECOC is really all about.
I'm glad you hit on something there that is fascinating and somewhat inherent to the OIF, and that's that in many ways the goalposts are moving always. You address a challenge, and then the challenge builds on itself, and suddenly there's something else to work on. And you're incorporating different working groups, or the working groups are incorporating different members, and that's exciting and dynamic and never boring. Is it anything else? Is it frustrating, or is it just sort of the nature of the current beast?
I think Mike and I both talked about, this is the best of times. And as you just implied, yeah, maybe there's a downside to it. There's so many problems to solve, and we need to solve them so quickly. And so that's part of the challenge, is to establish prioritization and where to dedicate the energy to solve problems first. So that's always an ongoing, healthy discussion that occurs as well.
In the document section of the OIF website, and maybe you don't even know this, there's a dedicated section for success stories. And I stumbled upon this in preparation for this podcast. And the OIF breaks it down into distinct technologies and technology areas, right? Tunable lasers, transport SDN, right? And they're different ones. I do want to talk just in terms of distinct technologies where you two see some of the most significant points of progress, because technology doesn't always advance linearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's an intersection of. I mean, I don't. To step back, I'm not sure how recent that success story is. updated. I think it seems like every quarter now we meet quarterly where we're pumping out some new white paper or some new implementation agreement, and so I feel like we're just moving too fast to even document all the success stories we have. I feel like that's a cop out answer, but I think it's an intersection of a lot of different things that's kind of converging into just enabling these great advancements. The components are ready, right? Everyone's moving so fast, and these multi-vendor interop demos encourage accelerated maturity and adoption within the customer base. And in there's kind of two separate solutions for in the past connecting you know optical interconnects inside the data center, and then maybe those long haul connecting data centers together. But as again as this AI thing is taking over, the the one rack or one data center isn't enough, right? And so now all these small little optimizations that Nathan talked about, all these little problems we're solving, aggregate into just huge leaps. I think either every quarter or every year, um, and it's really kind of coming down to not only just the high speed signaling, either the optical coherent or the electrical interfaces that we're solving, but tying it all together with when you're deploying hundreds of thousands or millions of these optics, the problem becomes on the orchestration side. So the management, the seamless success story comes from the OIF. I mean, it's gluing together all these different projects going on into one kind of coherent, for lack of a better word, story that the OIF can tell about owning the complete stack under one roof, and kind of having all those experts coming together and identifying their own unique problems and making them more of a group problem, kind of feed into being able to solve these problems faster than ever. So all under the single roof of the OIF, where we're doing everything, that synergy and rubbing shoulders with either your colleagues maybe that you don't really interact with outside of the OIF, ecosystem partners or customers or even the competitors. It all feeds into some quickly moving progress, which is I think exciting. Yeah.
Standards are obviously core and central to OIF and what it does and what its members are working in. Standards in different sectors, different fields can have differing viewpoints or different views of standards. Have advances in optical networking broadly done anything in your minds to shift the view of standards that maybe some of your members hold?
So I think there's a couple ways to think about that question. So, and let's start off with perhaps a negative connotation. Um, you know, th- some in the industry would argue that standards move too slowly. It takes time to build consensus. Each of the different voices that comes into the start of a new standard have different preferred outputs. And so we have to work through that process. Sometimes it can be a painful process of arriving at consensus, because we all face the inevitability that if we don't arrive at consensus, we're not going to generate a standard. If we don't have a standard, then we don't generate that rising tide that lifts all boats. So, that as a preconceived idea is out there. One of the success stories of the OIF, going back to your last question, but then bringing it to this question, is that our organization isn't mired in red tape. Organizationally, our forefathers had the wisdom to bring together a set of bylaws that enables us to move very quickly, and we work in a standardized way, and we generate an industry standard solution, but we have the ability or the freedom to make a leap when we need to, or zig or zag when required. And so at the OIF, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is being very nimble, being able to start a project quickly, being able to adjust a project very quickly. And then, when we do get to the point like we will be at ECOC, where we're demonstrating viability, then get that standard published, get it out to market, and move on to the next big problem. So the the technical challenges, we've been talking about it for this whole conversation, are huge. Um, but from a standardization standpoint, we all are aligned in that we need to find a way to move quickly. Otherwise, we're going to miss a market opportunity or underserve a market opportunity. And we always, the membership are the ecosystem partners. So we're always working together to try and find a way to break down the walls, build the consensus, and enable us to move forward in a quick manner. So from that standpoint, I think that's what we do a little bit different at the OIF with regard to standardization is look for ways to break roadblocks and move quickly.
And for those ecosystem partners and members, and for those in industry broadly, industry workshops are a huge benefit, a huge resource. Um, at a time when data rates are not just coveted, but they're really needed, increasing data rates. I just want to ask what those workshops are going to look like coming up. What areas are they going to be focused in for OIF looking ahead into 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is common in a lot of different forms, but I think the OIF is really special where we have a lot of experts on a lot of different topics. I think that's a common theme that's been coming up with all our answers. But and I think the OIF is doing a great job in leveraging those experts in educating not only just the membership but also the industry, the market, externally as well. We've through figuring out COVID, I think we figured out WebEx pretty well. And so we've been able to do a lot of different CMIS tutorials online, like, webcasts. And so there's a lot of different experts on very specific and relevant topics, giving kind of some tutorials on CMIS, how maybe we do, whatever, upgrading modules in the field or communicating with those modules. And then I know there's a lot of different OIF workshops or 448 gig workshops to really get the industry to set them straight and really have those tough but necessary conversations in pushing the implementations forward, getting everyone on the same page and making a lot of quick progress. So I think not only we come at it from the technical side, but also it's a privilege to have the industry analysts that we kind of bump ideas off of. They come into the OIF membership, they present, and sometimes it's just kind of like feed the beast. They say, look at all this amazing work that you're doing, and it's turning into X amount of dollars that us engineers probably don't really realize. But there's a lot of different ways to get educated, I think, within the OIF and with all these workshops. We have white papers addressing optical scale up, the future, what optical and scale up connectivity might look like, and then also just these interoperability demos are always a cornerstone of outreach and education to the market in showing the membership what kind of impact they're having on the world, and but also just educating the industry on the far reaches that the OIF has in terms of identifying problems and solving those, filling up those gaps with connectivity in the data center and data between data centers.
I want to end with this, and obviously there's a degree of separation between maybe engineering and end use and application. But speaking broadly, under the umbrella of optical networking broadly, are there any applications or any technology spaces that either of you see as particularly dynamic right now, or maybe a better way of phrasing that is any application areas that you're really pleased to be supporting right now?
So the OIF has been around for over 25 years, and over that time, we've been singularly focused on datacom, telecom, networking aspects of the industry. And I expect that will continue to be our singular focus in the OIF. Now, our membership consists of a wide range of companies that are developing many different technologies, and those are going to have applications across various industry spectrums, medical, automotive, as you said, a whole wide range of applications. And so I think the way we think about it is if we're going to satisfy our current market, then we need to maintain that focus. But we absolutely acknowledge that some of the fundamental technologies being developed for the datacom, telecom, networking market are going to find applications in other segments. And our member companies are going to ensure that those technologies get that multi-use or multi-application and brought to market. But in the interest of making sure that we satisfy our market, we're very likely to continue with this myopic focus on the networking space and how we can enable compute to go faster, how we can enable data transfer to happen faster, whether it's data transfer across the globe or whether it's data transfer from a GPU accelerator to a memory pool. And so I think we're going to stay in our lane and continue to focus on that, but we're very proud of the broad expanse of applications that are also supported by technologies that were fundamentally developed here under the OIF's umbrella.
Well, Nathan, Mike, thank you both very much for taking the time today en route to ECOC. Have a great show and all the best. We'll check in again soon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
With that, we conclude another episode of All Things Photonics. Thank you to our sponsors, to the technical staff behind the scenes, and to continued support from the Photonics Media editorial team. As always, questions, comments, thoughts, and ideas are welcome. Let us know how we're doing via email at allthings@photonics.com. All Things Photonics is available on all major platforms and on our website, photonics.com.